Chiefs Kingdom, we have breaking news surrounding L'Jarius Sneed as the Chiefs announce they are prepared to franchise tag him. Now, what exactly does that mean? We're going to break that all down right here on the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports, because when breaking news happens, we got you covered. We got the report from Jeremy Fowler saying the Chiefs have informed L'Jarius Sneed they are prepared to use the franchise tag and are open to consummate a trade off it if no long-term deal is reached per source. Sneed is agreeable to the scenario, giving him a chance to talk with other teams while Kansas City remains in play. So kind of all this means is there's going to be one of two things happening. They're going to trade him after the franchise tag, or they're going to extend him after the franchise tag. We're going to talk about both options, what would it mean for the Chiefs, what they could get in a trade for L'Jarius Sneed, and ultimately how this all intertwines to encapsulate Chris Jones and his contract situation, and why I think this is a step towards getting a contract done with Stone Cold Jones. But before that, this is exactly why you hit that subscribe button. Breaking news happens. We're in the studio. We're live right now. We're still putting out videos as quick as humanly possible. So hit that subscribe button right this second, because you're not going to regret it. Breaking news happens. We have you covered within the hour. Hit that sub button right now. I promise you, you're not going to regret it. You're going to join one of the fastest growing Chiefs communities on all of YouTube. All right, let's start with the first option, is that we will trade Sneed. Now, this would be on the franchise tag. So what would happen is the Chiefs would tag L'Jarius Sneed and then proceed to trade him to another franchise. So what would that mean? Basically, you get a pick out of him is kind of what the baseline would be. You're probably going to get a draft pick off L'Jarius Sneed if you do trade him. One name that has been popping up right off the top of my head was the Eagles. They're in need of some secondary help, especially in the cornerback area, and that would be a first-round pick. You'd keep your first-round pick. You would have 2 first-rounders, one around the 25-24 area, and then your 32nd overall pick. And boom, you have 2 first-round picks to potentially buff up your wide receiver room and hopefully just overall encapsulate your team as a lot bigger of a threat in, I think, a lot of different facets. So that's option one, is that the Chiefs will ultimately tag L'Jarius Sneed and then trade him to potentially the Eagles. I mean, even higher, they could trade him to, like, say, the Titans, the Falcons, up in the higher picks of the draft. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, I think, is worth a pretty substantial pick. The second option, he will be franchise tagged and then extended. So what does that mean? Well, they're prepared to use the franchise tag. Now, that's going to be this year. But they also want to extend him to a long-term deal. That's what they want to do. The problem is, right now, the money doesn't exactly work. And so they'll franchise tag and extend him. Now, although this doesn't seem like the most likely option at this point, I think it's definitely worth talking, because the way he played this past season was really unlike any other cornerback in the National Football League. Completion percentage was less than 52%. He only allowed 406 yards. He had 0 touchdowns allowed in the regular season. 0 touchdowns, and just 1 in the postseason on an incredible pass in the divisional game against the Buffalo Bills. You see right there, 14 pass breakups in 16 games and 2 interceptions, along with this dude was allowing a QB rating of 55.9 when he was covering receivers like Tyreek Hill, like A.J. Brown, like DJ Moore. I mean, there was just wide receiver after wide receiver. He was absolutely locking down and ultimately taking control of them. Now, the thing that I think you have to remember here is that he was one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. There was only one problem, though. Trent McDuffie was also one of the best cornerbacks in the National Football League. And so, is his value diminished by that? Is his value taken away from that? I think maybe just slightly, because obviously with Chris Jones, behind him you do have George Karlaftis, but he's not Chris Jones. Behind L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, I'm not going to lie, Trent McDuffie was the better quarterback in the Super Bowl this past season. So I honestly think in some ways it diminishes the value, at least on the Chiefs, for L'Jarius Sneed, which is why I think this tag and trade may be the option that both Kansas City and L'Jarius Sneed work out. I asked the question, though, are you wanting to trade L'Jarius Sneed, or are you wanting to extend him? Let me know what you would do in the comments section. Put on your little GM hat. You're Brett Veach right now. What are you doing? Are you trading for L'Jarius Sneed and getting him off your roster, getting a top pick? Or are you extending him to make sure he stays with the Kansas City Chiefs for the foreseeable future? I'll give you a quick second to go do that. All right, listen, L'Jarius Sneed was amazing this year, but he's been putting up stats like that for his entire career. You look over the past 4 seasons, he's just grown and grown and grown. 2022 was a pretty amazing year, 108 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 11 pass breakups, and 3 interceptions. Obviously followed it up with an impressive season this year. This guy has been a top cornerback in the National Football League for the past couple years, and he should be valued and honestly presented like that in a lot of different facets in trades and extension talks and kind of everything all together. Now, coming up, I'm going to tell you what the franchise tag would cost, what his market value is, and kind of what I could see happening. But before that, I'm going to tell you about one of our amazing sponsors, and that is Prize Picks. You can get a $100 deposit match by going to prizepicks.com/CLNS and using the code CLNS on that first deposit match, where you're going to get $100. Now, I know football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up, whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court. There's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Now, I know everybody likes the hardwood, but I also love the diamond too. So I got my MLB season-long picks in, and here's 3 that I think you should tail me with. I got Ronald Acuna Jr., more than 37.5 season-long home runs. Mookie Betts, I got more on 32.5 season-long home runs. And then KB, Chris Bryant, had a spring training home run just yesterday. He plays in Coors Field. That atmosphere is thin. The ball is going to travel. He's going to get at least 20 bombs. I got the more on him. You can put these exact same picks in right now on Prize Picks. But obviously I know they got NBA, they got NHL, they got PGA, they got NASCAR, everything you can think of. Prize Picks has you covered. And if you're looking at some NBA games, obviously a lot of hype around in that right now. Well, Prize Picks offers an injury insurance so that your entry stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. So, for NBA basketball games or college basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry will stay alive. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS for that first deposit match of up to $100. That link will be in the comments and the description of this video. Shout out to Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, here's what Sneed would happen. He's either going to get tagged and extended or tagged and traded. Right now, Spotrac has Sneed's market value around $16.3 million per year. A franchise tag for a quarterback would be set at $19.8 million per year. Obviously, you can see the Chiefs are willing to spend some money on this guy, but I think they'd rather at this point probably tag him and then trade him. So, how exactly does this help the Chiefs? Well, pretty much either way, they win. And I'll tell you this kind of why. If you sign him on the franchise tag and then extend him, you have a top-tier cornerback on your roster for, in theory, the next 4 or 5 years. If you franchise tag and trade him, you're going to get at least a second-round pick. And why do I say at least a second-round pick? Well, this comes from Nate Taylor, who had the report talking about L'Jarius Sneed, kind of the same thing, just multiple sources about talking about L'Jarius Sneed. But he had this note that I wanted to include. In 2019, Dee Ford was traded to the 49ers for a second-round pick. This is a similar situation, franchise tagged and traded. 49ers gave them a second-round pick. L'Jarius Sneed is better than Dee Ford. So, what would you get for him? I think you could potentially get a first-round pick. Now, it may be a later first-round pick. I don't think the Patriots are calling you up and saying, hey, we'll give you number 3 for Sneed. That's just not going to happen. But I could say probably around pick 24 and up, maybe 20s, low 20s could be an option. If you traded away your pick as well, say 32 and Sneed, you could potentially get a higher draft pick, maybe closer to the top 10. I think there's going to be a lot of other things that have to go around with this in contract basis and how much money the team that you're trading to has in cap space. There's a lot of intangibles with that. The one intangible that is kind of separate from all this is Chris Jones, though. And so with this kind of, I guess, I don't want to call that a new thing because we kind of had the idea that L'Jarius Sneed was potentially going to be tagged by the Kansas City Chiefs. But now that it's kind of official, where does that sit with Chris Jones? Well, to me, I think it means the deal is done. I think it means that he is going to come back to Kansas City on a contract somewhere around 4 years and $118 million. That's around what I have him as. yearly contract of $29.5 million, making him one of the highest paid interior defensive linemen in the National Football League. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean right now, right here, they're going to go sign Chris Jones just because this report came out. No. But I do think it means that the number one priority is placed on Chris Jones, and that is an obvious thing throughout the entire organization. We heard from Brett Veach earlier today at the Combine say that Chris Jones is the guy we want. He is number one, and L'Jarius Sneed is number two. These are the top two priorities, but obviously with the cap space, it's going to be tough to try and get both of them worked out, even with cutting MVS, even with restructuring Mahomes' contract, even with restructuring Jawan Taylor's contract. You're still going to have some trouble making money and having the ability to grow this team just from this year. And so I know that I'm pretty confident about Chris Jones re-signing with the Chiefs now, but what's your confidence level sitting at with Chris Jones? On a scale from 1 through 10, 1 being the most confident, 10 being the most confident, or excuse me, 1 being the least confident, 10 being the most confident, how confident are you in Chris Jones potentially signing again with the Kansas City Chiefs? Get down in the comment section and let me know. All right, here's the thing. Stone Cold Jones is obviously your first priority, so you have to pay him like it. The contract you would give him would be around $29.5 million, which, again, is why I think that the Chiefs are saying we're going to franchise tag you or we're going to tag and trade you because we need this space for Chris Jones. If you can find somebody that will help us out, that's cool. We'll give it to you. We're going to work that out. But ultimately, this is our plan, and now we have to stick to it knowing that Chris Jones is the number one guy on our roster. And it's fair because this year he was one of, if not the best players on the defensive line in the entire NFL, and honestly was the leader of the Chiefs defense even though he missed the first game. 10.5 sacks, 30 tackles, 4 pass breakups, PFF grade north of 80. This guy played amazing, and he didn't miss a beat even after missing that first game of the season. And honestly, watching the Super Bowl, watching the way that he overall just kind of commanded and controlled the defense, I said this in a couple shorts, so make sure you're watching those, but he just has that, I guess, presence of a leader. He has that, and in some ways, a vibe of, I am going to be the one to help lead us. Whenever something was wrong, whenever something was happening, he was always there to make sure the team kept their heads on straight and was able to ultimately win the Super Bowl in my mind. I think he really got the defense to kind of get their mind straight and hopefully kind of get them to a point where they can go and now grow themselves. L'Jarius Sneed, he's not big on talking. He's more of a quieter guy, which isn't a bad thing. I think cornerbacks should be quieter. But at the same time, when you're talking about importance to the team overall, it has to be Chris Jones over L'Jarius Sneed. And I think that's why this franchise tag and trade could be the way that it happens. Crazy things have happened, but we will see what's to come. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button because if a trade happens, guess what? Just like we had this report, we're going to have it out to you ultimately, pretty much immediately, to be honest. So make sure you're hitting that sub button. We got the best coverage on all of YouTube on the Kansas City Chiefs right here. As always, Chiefs Kingdom, we really appreciate you watching this video. Breaking news never stops and never sleeps for us. We appreciate you and peace out.